when I looked at how John and I were first connected, I was at a pretty good crossroads, both personally and professionally. Professionally, I wanted to initiate, start the process of succession planning for a role that I have in my company. Company that I've been involved with for 20 plus years. And with that, all the relationships and patterns and successes and failures that come wrapped up with that sort of length of time. Privately held, owner also my direct, let's say, boss. And so I had to work with him on the succession planning. From a benefit for my professional career, it was invaluable having John be available with his expertise, with his knowledge, and just with his abilities to listen and also be thoughtfully firm with what I should do. And most importantly to me, to have someone that's not inside the business to be able to share what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, and then to ultimately part support, part hold me accountable, and part be that coach advisor where the different levers that needed to be pushed or relaxed or whatever could take place in a way that worked for me and worked for my company. And ultimately that succession plan was implemented, and it was, knock on wood, as of today, successful. So that was the biggest advantage in terms of a professional opportunity of why coaching benefited me. And I couldn't have done it without a coach. I think I'd still be in the position I was. I think we probably would have figured it out in 3 times the amount of time. You know, I think I knew in the back of my mind, and that kind of points to the being authentically yourself, right? I'd always been and always kind of have prided myself on being, quote, a really good company man. And the different directions of the company and how the company needed to go, I just jumped on board. And in that process, my personal life and some of the challenges and, you know, some of the tough stuff that pops up really became too intermingled with my professional life. So I think really John initially was providing me that ability and awareness of where I was at with my life, where I was strong in terms of some of the stuff I was doing, both professionally and personally, where I could probably improve. And through all that, as you kind of peel back the onion, this concept of succession planning, which I know was there, really took shape and form. Assessing where you're at, understanding some of the struggles you're having, being a really thoughtfully firm, like I said earlier, unbiased, not in the business professional. And I think that became one of the targets that you and I identified pretty early on. We had work to do before we really got to that. If you're going to be coached, we all have memories of what we think things were. And I think John does a really good job of steering and listening and saying, hey, remember this. We talked about that. I'm seeing this again. It was interesting because I think depending on where we all sit in our careers, we've taken probably a various assortment of assessment tools, right? So when John had me take the tool, the mind scan, and I did it, pretty interesting exercise, just the way it's framed. You know, didn't expect it to be the way it was with the prioritization of just a lot of different stuff. The actual assessment was unique. The results were very eye-opening. It was interesting. My strengths that were shown as being my strengths and where, you know, the assessment pointed to kind of where I sat with certain things was very reaffirming. The areas that maybe were contributing to some of my blind spots or that were highlighting some of the weaknesses that I knew existed, the way they were framed up and the way they were presented was absolutely digestible, super impactful for me. And then obviously when you get the assessment, John walks you through it and you discuss it. And that's a great session. I'm a work in progress. So that's the first thing. And I've become much more comfortable with that being a really good thing for me personally and professionally. I'm not going to be a finished product. So the work that you do to be authentic, I think I'll use the term, it's an evolution, not a revolution. You can't become authentically yourself like that. You got to work at it, and you're going to take some step forward, you're going to have some fallback, but the whole idea is you wake up and you work hard to be the best version of yourself you can. What coaching provided me, and John in particular, was the ability to look at some really tough stuff that was wrapped in this personal, professional kind of, like when you look at a Venn diagram, my strengths used to be that I could keep my family and professional life separate but congruent with each other, if that makes sense. And I found myself in a place where that Venn, that part that was intersecting, was just so tight that my decision making and my drive with my family was almost identically what was happening with what I wanted to do in my professional life. And in reality, my authentic self, when it's all said and done, is my family is number one. Doing things that help me promote being the type of husband and the type of father, the type of role model I want to be, that's my authentic self. That's what is inside me. So what I should do as a career should be supportive and augment that and provide value for me, with that being my foundation, not necessarily doing everything in business to do what the company asks, how they want it to be done, and be an incredibly high performer and have that be second. I think even saying it the way I do now, I could not have put that into concise words when John and I first started coaching. And so just the fact that I can do that today feels very authentic to me and feels like that's who I am. The tools that have been provided by John, I've adapted. I have become a journaling zealot. John will probably at some point talk to you about your inner voice. And that's that part of you that is just, it's you, and it may or may not always come out. You cannot bullshit yourself if you ask yourself tough questions and you have to write it down. In the beginning, you cheat a little bit. You're not necessarily as frank as you want to be. I now look forward to those conversations, and it's brutal. It comes out. And so being able to understand that moving yourself towards pain, moving yourself towards conflict, moving yourself towards tension are all things that with practice become another tool for being authentically yourself. And that's something that John and I worked on and highlighted again at the beginning. I was never work averse. I was never project taking on averse. I was never, I got to tackle tough stuff adverse. But I think how you do those things to match the authenticity of yourself and going after them head on with, again, positive intentions and with a view that we all come from different places has been profound. And so like the basically the authentic side, I think, is probably in coaching the biggest success John and I have. I think it's been incredibly positive. I have to look at when we started together and the time where I've implemented these tools and kind of do a quick assessment. It falls into that evolution, not revolution. So relationships, personally and professionally, are, I call them tricky fun, right? They're imperfect. And so because of this, I no longer rely as much on keeping everybody happy. I no longer work on perfection with my relationships. I work on being present. I work on being as real as I can be. And with directness, I've really worked on who am I interacting with and what do I perceive to be their level of comfort with directness. And so that's been really good. So someone that I work with professionally that I can be incredibly direct with, I have become even more direct with. folks that might take directness and it might hurt their self-confidence or it might be less motivating. I'm not less direct. I just plan in advance how I can have the same outcome, but maybe with a softer delivery. And I think probably the biggest thing is I've really tried to do a better job of listening. All the things that we've dealt with as a family, it's probably without some of these tools, I just think we would be in a much different place personally, and I would, because families are by definition imperfect. All these things I've kind of shared have really been great for my spouse, have been great for my kids, have been great for my relationship with my parents, have been great for my relationship with my friends. And I've changed my whole goal structures each year, where I had very specific goals that had very specific outcomes. To my goals now are, I want to be healthier. I want to have better relationships with family and friends. I want to become an avid reader. And I make sure that the activities that I do promote those themes versus them being, I want to lose 25 pounds or I want to read 28 books. I don't put numbers on things. I like to have an evolution, not a revolution. So that's kind of what's helped me as well. And that's bleeded into both my personal and professional life. When I look at values, I boil it down to what's important to me, and then how am I, when no one that matters to me, if they like or dislike me, is not around, right? How am I? I'm much more aware of what matters. I'm much more accepting of the instances or the opportunities or the people that may not always match with my values. And I don't try to change it unless it's obviously something that I have no choice, right? It's just there and you have to. But that kind of, my values, I've really adopted kind of the basics of the serenity prayer. My vision with it is I'm going to be the best version of myself I can to as many people as I can. But in reality, I've got a core group that makes up the fabric of who I am, where I used to probably think that I could impact or change or have a positive influence on every single person I came in contact with. I was talking with the colleague that succeeded me. I had recommended that he take the two key people in our group, get them out of the office, and do a SWOT. Because he said, John, your recommendation, though I thought it was going to be impossible to carve out a day, he said it was amazing how you think you can't do something because of time or because of scheduling, how impactful it was. That's the way I look at coaching, is you're gonna always feel, anyone's gonna feel that the business or the schedule or the time that you already are putting into your job or your career or your position, how can I dedicate specific time to coaching? I look at it as the best time spent, and it will actually save you time in the long run because you will improve. And I will say, having somebody that is not in the business or your business is an absolute key. As a recommendation, that if you're gonna do coaching, do it with the idea that it's just as important as any project deadline, any sort of activity you have in your business, that you have to own coaching. John's going to be and meet you 50% of the way. You have to be willing to put in the same amount. Otherwise, it won't. Again, perfection's not the goal. I mean, John and I would probably both agree that in our coaching sessions, I think we both would say that we absolutely put the appropriate time and energy and preparation into our sessions. I think that was one of our strengths. Am I willing to walk this path with a coach where I'm not expecting the coach to be any more than 50% of my journey?